It's 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, nearly 2 months into the second COVID wave in the state of Punjab. While most shops and stores remain closed because of the curfew, all hospitals are working overtime. A look inside the COVID ICU shows several patients on oxygen therapy as it remains the mainstay treatment in the battle against COVID. Jaspal Singh has been in the hospital for a few days receiving treatment for COVID. His oxygenation has improved and he was transitioned to a non-rebreather mask delivering 16 liters per minute. Several patients like Jaspal require varying degrees of oxygen across Punjab and India currently. But where is this oxygen coming from? In the small village of Tibba, half an hour outside of Ludhiana, Mr. Harpreet and his family run an oxygen bottling plant. Typically supplying roughly 50% of the district of Ludhiana's oxygen needs, their facility has been working overtime during this second wave. Mr. Harpreet's daughter Malika explains how the system of oxygen allocation and distribution works and how things were managed in Punjab. First, COVID hospitals calculate how much oxygen they would require in metric tons per day. They raise this demand in a Zoom meeting with their district's nodal officer every morning. The district nodal officer communicates this to the state nodal officer, who further requests the central oxygen cell in New Delhi. The center then allocates oxygen according to the demand raised by each state and assigns them an oxygen plant from where they can get their oxygen from. The state of Punjab does not have any factory producing liquid oxygen and procures most of its oxygen from its neighbouring state Himachal. But due to the oxygen shortage in Delhi, most of the supplies from Himachal were now redirected to the national capital. Punjab needed to get its oxygen from somewhere else, or it was heading for a catastrophe like New Delhi. Facilities like Harpreet Cryogenics now receive their oxygen from Bokaro steel plant in Jharkhand, a distance of 1600 kilometers. Empty tankers are airlifted by C-17 Globemasters of the Indian Air Force from Mohali Airport and transported to Bokaro Steel City in Jharkhand. Here they are filled with liquid oxygen. From Bokaro, trucks filled with liquid oxygen travel the distance of 1600 kilometers back to Punjab in a single trip. These trucks are accompanied by police vehicles and take about 3 to 4 days to reach the bottling plant at Tibba. One such truck has just arrived in the bottling facility at Tibba. The liquid oxygen from the truck is transferred into a storage tank which has a capacity of 20,000 liters. Liquid oxygen remains in its liquid state at minus 187 degrees Celsius. It is converted into gaseous form by this vaporizer machine. Empty oxygen cylinders have just arrived from the hospital and are backed onto the platform. A worker manually transfers these 10 cubic meter cylinders, each weighing about 70 kgs. The empty cylinders are then lined up and filled with oxygen gas. All the filled cylinders are transferred to the designated area ready for departure. Filled cylinders are then loaded on the truck ready to be delivered to the hospital. This truck is ready to leave. Similar trucks travel across the district multiple times to supply the increased demand of various hospitals. The truck arrives at the facility outside of Ludhiana where there is a high volume of COVID patients. Full cylinders are unloaded in the appointed area, each one carrying 10 cubic meters of oxygen. Empty cylinders are loaded onto the truck to be transported back to Tibba, where they will be filled and the cycle continues. The truck makes more than 4 trips a day to this hospital alone, as it currently requires about 250 cylinders per day. Filled oxygen cylinders are then attached to the hospital's oxygen manifold. The oxygen manifold allows a constant pressure of oxygen to be delivered across the many pipelines, including the oxygen into the ICU. This network of pipes supply Jaspal with a reassuring and constant amount of oxygen. Every liter that he breathes has traveled 1600 kilometers, took 5 days, and an endless amount of manual labor to reach him. In the second wave of the COVID-19 era, the chain of distribution of oxygen plays a vital role to answer the shortages in the hospitals. A break in this chain, whether at the level of the state allocation, transportation, distribution, or a shortage of manual labor, has resulted in drastic consequences in some states. The Punjab regional authorities have gone above and beyond to make sure that appropriate amount of oxygen have been supplied to the hospitals despite an increased demand. Still, a lot needs to be done to prevent a third wave.